Hello, this is the award-winning show that brings you everything and anything Nollywood. I am Koyi Shutadi. Glad you can join us. He landed in the film industry on his feet and proving that passion fired by prayer really works. Please sit back and meet up close and personal David Ayeni. Thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule here
It's
in
an honor.
Lagos to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. And
So let's take a rewind and look at, how you got into this film business anyway.
for the last 30 years, I've always wanted to do film. But as you can imagine, film used to just be this. You couldn't just get into film easily because it was a niche market. Um, Technology today has made film available to basically almost everyone. Our phones are really as good as certain high-end cameras. And so I wanted to do that, but it was a high entry point. So what I did was I entered through broadcast. So I started doing television. So from post-production and editing from tape, when we were doing tape, and then I started editing when editing went digital. And 20 years plus, I just found myself in television, moving from editing to becoming a technical engineer, building TV stations in different parts of the world, working with hardware manufacturers. I worked with a couple who were in the US. And at a point, I was even a regional sales manager for Africa, traveling around and working with different TV stations. I've even worked with the NTA. I've worked with channels, believe it or not. When the TriCaster was released, and worked in channels, and I've worked with other TV stations. But COVID was my turning point. When COVID happened, I realized that I'd spent about 30 years of my life further away from film, which was my initial reason why I went into television. And that informed my decision to go back to film, which was my desire. And here we are, 5 years later, I guess.
You spoke about television and, the movement from tapes, and then you graduated into film, which we now have gone into digitalization. Let's look at our industry, especially the movie industry, and say, where were we? Where are we? And where could we be?
I think when we had analog systems, there were many layers in production, many layers. I mean, way back in analog, and this is back talking about like television broadcast, for example, you would have the person on the tape playing back, and you had so many tape replay systems and playback. But today, all that is a file that is digitally and stored, and you can easily move things around. However, with film, the time it took to cut tapes, to shoot on tape and edit the tape, and spline it together, and then run it through, that took a longer time. What we now have is that we're having more contents because both the production and post-production time has been significantly reduced. And now with the introduction of AI adding to that workflow means you can actually do some breathtaking scenes that does not require you to do a lot. There's still human input, but it just means there is really no limit to how we can create whatever it is we want. And so let me put certain things in perspective. Things that were productions we felt only Hollywood could accomplish because of the budget. With the digital world, we're now suddenly we're able to do some of these things because we now have certain technologies at our disposal that are affordable and create our own content to tell our own stories the way we want them to. So I think there's a huge, obviously there's a huge leap from analog to digital, but it is still the same stories being given more breadth. And when I mean breadth, I mean basically the scope of it. We're able to scale because we don't have to depend on a lot of analog processes, to get things. So I think film can only keep growing further and further for as much as our minds can comprehend.
And now let's talk about your latest project, The Shades of Survival. Tell us a little bit about it so that we can go and see it. And what do you hope to achieve with this project?
So we shot a film called Shades of Survival. Shades of Survival is a documentary on breast cancer and how it affects black women, both in Africa and black women in diaspora. It focuses on the shame and the stigma that exists because a lot of women don't want to expose the fact that they have breast cancer. But it also shows hope in new treatments that are made available today that some of them or most of them don't even know exist. However, it also shows the bias in the medical system, especially those living abroad in other countries other than Africa. But also there's also a bias even in Africa, but a lot is in the countries we went to. And another pillar we approached with this film was the pillar of resilience. These women, the ones that have survived were the ones that were resilient and not taking the first opinion, second opinion. They checked because they knew something, they understood their bodies and knew something had changed. So that's what Shades of Survival is. And we were very, very, what's that word my producer would say? We took a huge leap in shooting in 3 continents. So even though it was my first film, I shot it in 5 countries. So we shot it in the United States, we shot in the UK, we shot in France, we shot in Nigeria, and then we shot in South Africa. And that was because black women are everywhere in the world. And because of the mortality rate of black women, both in Africa and abroad, whether in the US or in the UK, it was necessary that we covered them in most of the places where you find loads of black people. So obviously in Africa, that is where the majority, and you'll find us a lot in the UK, in the US as well, and even in France. Hence why we picked these countries, to shoot our film. And it's been an amazing journey to shoot your first film. And we got into the Cambridge Film Festival. And we also got into AFRIF, accepted into AFRIF, and it's the reason why I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, because our film is having its international debut at AFRIF next week, Friday at Landmark.
And now, you said a lot about the film and everything, but you did mention that you shot and talk to the young filmmaker who's watching you now, saying, "Oh, I like to do that." He was successful in getting that done. What were the challenges, and what were the loops that you had to jump to achieve this project?
If you look at me as a first-time filmmaker, then I think the first thing you think is, "Oh yeah, he's just starting." So this is something very huge to start your first film. If I'm a young filmmaker, and yeah, I probably have an ambition to shoot maybe somewhere in Jamaica. Let me use that example. But I have a script, and that's where it is, and it feels far-fetched. What was different for me was that I had been in television for like 30 years. And in being in television for 30 years, I've had the privilege of traveling to different parts of the world. So, for example, I was the regional sales manager for a broadcast company that was based in the US. And it allowed me to travel 9 African countries regularly. And I started seeing the fact that being in, let's say, for example, being in somewhere like Tanzania, I was in Zanzibar, and I was in a corner, and that corner reminded me of a place I was in Kaduna. Like this, the culture here, I could have sworn that this is one of those streets in Kaduna, everything about the vibe. And I realized we actually, as Africans, we have this culture together. It's in us. And so when I was shooting my film, I had already been to these places, so I knew exactly what shooting in Cape Town could look like, or what shooting in France could look like, because I'd had the opportunities to be there. It wasn't something that was a dream. It was real to me. So coming down to people who are trying to shoot a film, shoot around the places you're familiar with, especially if you're just starting. So if you're going to tell a story about a young man and all, find a house you know every corner of that house, and that you have access to use the house. Rather than sometimes, I'm not saying you should not be ambitious, because shooting in different locations is based on perception. I'm not sure what the post-production of what we're currently recording is going to be like. But we've shot in an environment we both understand, and we've tweaked it to work for us. So it might be your phone that you're using to shoot a project. You would find it easier to be more productive when you go to an environment that you already know. And if you're not sure, there's something called Recce. For those that don't know, go and look at where you want to shoot and understand the environment and be in that environment. It makes it easier to then translate what that environment is to screen. Because what I've seen in some productions is you just go there, no one has done any recce. Okay, where are we going to put light now? Okay, let's just put light here. And at the end of the day, you look at your shot and you're probably not happy with the way it's communicating to you, because you didn't go there to do a recce prior. And in shooting my film, I have to say, there were places I went to that I had never been before. I was given access within a very short time. And all I went there with is all my film knowledge. Where is the key light coming from? Where is this coming from? All right, how do I just at least make it look good enough for film? So be familiar with the environment you want to shoot. And I did that in this film. Whatever the country it was we shot, I've been there before. And also, it doesn't matter what gear you're using. Of course, more expensive gear would give your film a feel, but I think nothing beats the story. Nothing beats the story. If you have a good story and you're able to communicate that story, people like good stories. Trust me, they've seen great hotels, they've seen great scenes, but we would always sit down for a story. I remember, back in the day, Tales by Moonlight, I would wait to just hear a story that just taps into my imagination. Get a good story. Learn the environment you're going to tell that story in, and be comfortable with that environment, and I think it will translate on screen.
Now, I don't want to say that, this is done and dusted, but, let's say that this project is in the pocket. What's the future for David Ayeni?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking me. I didn't start my film journey with Shades of Survival. I was going to shoot something else. As a matter of fact, I had started shooting a project. It was going to be my first documentary, which was going to be a series titled Living in Diaspora. So Living in Diaspora was what I started with. I actually had gone to shoot. And like I said to you earlier, I picked a friend that I knew. And this friend is a friend that was born in Kogi State, lived in Kaduna, now lives in Germany, speaks Yoruba, speaks Igala, speaks Hausa, speaks German, and then throw in English and Pidgin English. He speaks 6 languages. And I just thought, and he lives in Germany, and I've seen his journey, and I thought, oh, why don't I tell his story? That's where I started from. And in that series, there's another friend who is a breast cancer survivor, and I added her as someone else that I would tell her story as someone who survived breast cancer while she was in America. But it was while we were shooting that two of my good friends, one like a best friend, had breast cancer and said, "Oh, they want to be a part of this little documentary that or docu-series that I was doing." And I recorded them, but the two that joined died within 6 months of the with 6 months after we recorded, and they died 6 weeks apart from each other. But it was that journey that changed, and I shelved living in diaspora and I started shooting Shades of Survival. And now Shades of Survival took me 3 years plus to finish. So what is in the future for David Ayeni? I just told you all these projects, but the main focus is how do I tell African stories? Because I was born and raised there. I left this country when I was 26. My dad was in the army. I got a chance to travel around Nigeria. So I've lived in different parts of Nigeria. I get the culture and have an opportunity to travel different parts of Africa. I'm like, we have so much rich stories. So I'm not going to focus it on just Nigeria. I'm going to tell African stories from a global perspective. And that's my vision.
So I am sure that we'll relieve this conversation maybe at the Emmys or somewhere like that. Hopefully, I'm sure you'll be able to do that and a whole lot more. Thank you once again for taking time out to have this conversation with us. David Ayeni up close and personal. When we return from a short break, we bring you more from Nollywood Uncut. Please stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned. Let's now check out what's new in Nollywood, starting from to see Nollywood directors and actors prep for the Lagos International Theatre Festival.
First time, we nailed it through our partners, Grace of God, and all the people that were involved and all the sponsors. So we're back, newer, bolder, and better. And what we decided that we're changing this year is that instead of having 5 venues like we had last year, which kind of like dissipated all our strengths or our energies, we're bringing everybody together into one big location, and that is the Muson Center. Like every industry, the theatrical space is growing. What people thought was the case is no longer the case. So in choosing this 20, we looked at the quality of the performance, the type of story that they're telling, the talent that are involved. So stage has come full circle to the point that actors from screen are here. So great actors. Bimbo Manuel is here. Kule Remy is here in my play. Tana Adelano is here. Efe Erele is here. We have them hosting. Nancy Isime, De Yemi Okolawon. Everybody's part of this. Why? Because they see greatness, they see beauty, they see excellence. And that is the story that we're selling. If you're part of this production, if you're part of this festival, you better be good. So there's a panel that chooses and decides which plays will be featured. Like you do in any other festival, we show the best of the best. Imagine Professor Ojewi, one of our best, coming all the way from America with a play. Unprecedented. Imagine the director of the State Theatre in South Africa coming down with a play. Unprecedented. That's what we're doing at this festival.
Mama, good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon, my dear child. Where have you been?
Mama, I'm sorry I'm a little late to help you cook. I went to the stream in Bongo, hoping to.
This bongo again. I have told you several times that that boy is no good news. Don't let this boy go put you for trouble one day.
Mama, I know you have told me. But Mama, you also tell me something. Mama, you said if you love someone, you take them for the good and the bad. And the best you can do for them is steer them in the right direction. By example, that's why I always try to teach Bongo by telling him and showing him things you and Papa instill in me every day, Mama.
Well, true to Bonale and St. Peter's, there's always an improvement. The first one is always big, so you can imagine what the second one is going to be like. More plays, I believe, this year. I think more countries involved. It's in one hub this year, which I think will make a difference. I think last year there was Glover Hall, there was Unilag, there was Muson, there was Terra. But this year, it's all going to be in Muson, which I think will be great because it will have a very, a buzzing, it'll have more of a buzzing atmosphere. So you can imagine a whole bunch of theater lovers in one space, all bumping into each other and talking to each other and talking about each play, to each other. So that last year was amazing. I couldn't believe that was the first edition. So I imagine that this year, in fact, I'm almost afraid maybe it will be mayhem because people might not get to see all the shows they want to see or have enough tickets. But that's what I'm expecting. I'm very excited. And last year, it's nice when you dream of something or you think of something and it happens. Because when it happened last year, I said to myself, Elvina, you have got to be a part of this next year. And here we are. So very excited. Well, this is my directorial debut in Nigeria. Yes, I am directing a play called Naiso and the Egg, which I wrote as well. And it's a very cute little African fairy tale. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it's aimed, anyone from the age of 4 to 104 will enjoy this play because there are messages for the children, messages for the youth, messages for the parents, messages for our elders. So it's a play that will cut across all the ages because you will see something in the play that is relatable to you no matter how old you are. And if you're not Nigerian or African, it will make you fall in love with us because it's all going to be colorful, it's all going to be how great we are as a people, and it's all going to be very encouraging about getting diaspora to come home and learn a little bit about your culture. So yeah, Naiso and the Egg.
Exciting times are here. I'm very proud and happy to be a part of the second edition of LITF. So I'm looking forward to this. There'll be a lot of exciting stuff for the night, from culture, of course, theater, performances, music, everything that makes theater will be happening at this festival. The plans are going on and it's bigger than life. Entertainment. Country is hard, right? Come, relax, and get entertained. We don't overpromise here. We tell you so that you can come and be surprised. But if you know of BAP, I don't think BAP should be selling any of her plays now because she's a queen in that field. Every time she's proving herself every year. So if at this point you're still doubting the BAP play, I don't know what to say to you. Maybe you're not our target audience. Wow, come. I'm kidding.
And that's it for this show. Trust that we have more for you next time. Until then, I am Kuyishutari asking you to aim high, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll probably end up with the stars.